Daffodill is a standard S rank, as of the game's release the only Chaos Esper in the game, and she specializes in high break damage and a very fancy playstyle. That is if you have her Awakenings at least, because at A0 she is about as mid as she can be. Which, to be fair, is still pretty good because she grants access to both a Scorch and Nova. Welcome, I am Rivyn Elowen, but you may call me Rivy, and this is your complete guide to my favorite character in NTE, Daffodill. First up, Daffodill's break damage is increased by 20%, and those 20% go into this part of the break damage formula for those that are interested. She also features a 5-part basic attack string, which does what we expect it to do, but the break inflicted by those is higher than from many other characters' basic strings. Dodging during her 5-part basic attack string will trigger a special dodge that does not interrupt her current combo. We can also hold down her basic attack to cast a charged attack, which generates an unusually high amount of energy and cycle gauge, while also dealing significant break. The animation is relatively long, however, and this skill is best used upon switching out, as we can simply swap cancel it, which will also prevent the skill's biggest weakness, and that is being interrupted. Daffodill also has a plunge attack, which we will never use, and a critical riposte that does what we expect it to do, does not interrupt her basic attack combo, and we will use it frequently. There's also this phantom step multiplier hidden within her basic attacks, and we will talk about it when it is time. Daffodill features 2 skills. Well, arguably it is just one skill, just the latter is an enhanced version of the first one. Her skill deals damage and break, and more importantly, for each support skill cast, Daffodill gains 1 stack of resonance. Each stack massively increases the damage and break inflicted by her skill, and at 2 stacks it replaces her skill with an enhanced version of it. Whether or not her regular skill or the enhanced skill is available, you can see by whether or not her skill glows menacingly. Her ultimate deals a massive amount of damage as well as break, and grants herself a damage bonus as well as inflicting insight on enemies hit. It is iterative, that insight is active on the enemy when they enter break, or in other words, become stunned. Furthermore, casting her ultimate will unlock a new skill for her called Phantom Blade. That is this previously mentioned part in her basic attacks. Phantom Blade can be used up to 2 times, and upon using her ultimate she resets all of her Phantom Step charges. Phantom Blade is automatically used when switching into her, and if she is switched in with her support skill, it will automatically be cast after her support skill. But here's the catch. If we parry an attack using her Phantom Blade, not only will it deal massive amounts of damage nearly equal to her ultimate, it will also fully fill up her ultimate energy. In addition, any parry using her support skill is also treated as a successful parry from Phantom Step. Means Daffodill's playstyle revolves around parrying enemy attacks by switching her in, while she has Phantom Step, dealing massive amounts of damage and break, and gaining resets for her ultimate. It should however be noted that her ultimate's cooldown does not reset. Daffodill's second passive will then grant an 80% damage bonus to her Phantom Steps, and her first passive enhances Discord, reducing the enemy's break cap by 10% for 30 seconds while affected, stacking up to 3 times. This break cap reduction does not impact the break damage dealt, despite the enemy's max break cap being part of the damage formula. Because Discord requires Nova and Scorch, and this break cap reduction being incredibly powerful, Heniel or Fadia as well as Sakari or Eitler are one of her best teammates. Lastly, Daffodill also features a support skill that most of the time does not matter all too much outside of the purpose for proccing Scorch or Nova. Nearly all of her damage comes from her Phantom Step as well as her ultimate, but her skill inflicts non-negligible amounts of break, so it is not to be neglected either and should even take priority over her ultimate despite dealing less damage. Focus first and foremost on unlocking both her passives as well as leveling her basics and skill, then her ultimate, and lastly her support skill. Because both her damage and break contribution are scattered throughout her kit, Daffodill is not a cheap investment. Daffodill's playstyle revolves around reactive gameplay and is probably the one character that is the most similar here to Zenless Zone Zero. While in most teams, parrying by swapping is nice and sometimes preferable, with a Daffodill it becomes iteratively more important as we need her ultimate energy refills to sustain her Phantom Step uptime. Well, that is unless you have her Awakening too, in which case it doesn't really matter as it fixes your and my skill issues, but well, more on that later. We open combat by starting on Sekedi or Adler, then switch into Daffodill. This is our first support skill, applying Scourge and hence also the first stack for her skill. We then switch into Heniel or Phadia to trigger Nova and Discord using their support skill, use their respective skills as applicable, and then switch back to Daffodill, refreshing Nova for a full buff from Heniel, as well as applying another break cap reduction from Daffodill. We now use her ultimate and follow up with her enhanced skill right after. We can now hold her health basic attack and swap cancel it to our fourth member and proceed from there. If we are attacked by a parryable attack, we parry the attack by switching into Daffodill, then use whatever she has available. Daffodill has probably the best Awakens in the game, resulting in a massive over 50% team damage gain, by more than doubling any break contribution the team has. Unfortunately, however, a lot of her Awakens only become really good in tandem with others, but when they do, their gain is massive. Her Awaken 1 is a fair increase in damage and break, and her A2 fixes effectively any skill issues you might have, fully restoring the ultimate's energy even if the parry fails. Her A3 prevents insight from being removed and also allows it to stack. This becomes especially relevant when combined with her A4 or A5. Her A4 increases break damage inflicted by Daffodill by 15% for each stack of insight on the target, and her A5 literally just deals additional instances of break damage for each stack of insight. Her Awakening 6 then grants her also 15% defense ignore. While the individual Awakenings are more on the lower side, well, outside of her A5 that is, when combined they stack up to a massive increase. Focus first and foremost on unlocking her A5 and A3, then her A4, followed by her A6. Lastly, you can unlock her A1 and A2. Her resonance effects are a simple damage increase for herself.
Most people skip right here, so hi, welcome! I hope you have a great day and my calculations will help you out. If you are not subscribed yet, please subscribe. Statistically, there's a good chance you are not yet subscribed. Thank you. I love you.
Daffodill's best in slot choice is her own signature youthful fantasy, and frankly, that is also the only weapon I would recommend. It is freely available by defeating the book boss, so you will have no issues obtaining it early on. This section will be short as well. Break damage does not care about your attack, crit or damage bonus stats, but it does care about enemy resistances. Hence, Diabolos is the only choice she has, as a 24% res shred are nothing to scoff at, and there is no break intensity set in the game, at least as of right now. This is where it becomes funny. At A0, it is actually not worth building Daffodill for break intensity. You can focus on crit attack and chaos damage instead. However, the more Awakens you obtain for her, the better break intensity becomes, massively beating out other stat choices starting after obtaining her A3 and A5. Adjust your build towards break intensity depending on whether or not you have at least her A3 and A5, and increase further up until A6. Because Diabolos is the only real set choice she has, regardless of her awakenings, this will be the layout you are running with. As for her substats, they follow the same rules as her main stats do. At A0, focus on crit values, then attack percent and damage bonus. starting after her A3 and A5 and becoming increasingly better the more awakenings you unlock. Break intensity will become your highest priority, followed by crit values and attack percent. But because we have 4 substat slots available per module and also on our cartridge anyway, I would recommend you to always aim for crit values, break intensity, and either of attack percent or damage bonus. Again, prioritize according to how many awakenings you have for her. Daffodill has a lot of team options, and given the current rate-up banner, a classic Haniel Daffodill core will serve very well with a new Nunnally team. Phadia works instead of Haniel, and Min can replace Nunnally here as well if you prefer to play as such, albeit both at a worse level of performance. To make full use of her passive, we can also play with a Sakedi or Adler to gain access to Scorch and Discord, with a Ji-Yuan, Mint or Nunnally taking the last slot. We can also play a Scorch-based team with Baichang instead, and if you don't like Haniel or Phadia, there also is a special version here with Adler. Both Adler and Sakedi build a full break intensity, and Adler uses an M5 Thief to buff the break damage even further. While very fun to play and the break damage really shines through on this team is also very restrictive in its team building. We can also play with Ji-Yuan as a burst sub-DPS, making use of the Hexed Esper cycle to increase both Ji-Yuan's and Baichang's damage. Lastly, a Skia or Hathor Hypercarry team will work just as well, albeit Daffodill does less for the team here than Ji-Yuan does, as both Hathor and Skia appreciate the ultimate energy from the charged Esper cycle a lot. Daffodill is the only Chaos Esper as of the game's release, and if you want to play any Scorch-based team, well, namely Baichang, Adler or Sakedi, you will need her. Chaos also enables Nova, which is both relevant for Aurelia and, more importantly, Haniel, as well as Discord, which, well, to be fair, that one here really matters if you already run Daffodill anyway. She offers a very high break infliction, is extremely fun to play with some of the best animations in the game, and also features one of the best awakening potentials in the entire game as well. But her actual value is also rather reliant on them. While Daffodill does bring a good chunk of value to your account simply by being a Chaos Esper and granting access to Scorch as well as Nova and Discord, she only really starts to shine after unlocking her A3 and A5, being somewhat skill intensive before her A2. She also has only one set option in Diabolos and is heavily dependent on her substats for the best performance. And speaking of best performance, as break damage is team-based, you usually want to build a dedicated break team around her at higher investment levels. Lastly, she does have multiple build options available, as she can also be build crit as well, thanks to her rather high multipliers. And with that, we are at the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, leave me a comment on your thoughts about Daffodill, and join the Discord. A special thanks to my YouTube and Patreon members who make this content possible. I appreciate all of you and wish you a great day. Peace!